Hello and welcome to another episode of VG Club. I am your host, Paul /Viv, aka Daxter23Jack, and today I am joined by Grace.
Hi.
Also joined by Kulak, aka Marcus.
Hey, what's Grace's AKA?
She changes it so much.
I know.
I still think of it
no
as
point.
a piranha plant, but it's like something else right now.
There's no point in trying to keep up with it, honestly. Because by the time you
Miss
get used to
Lila
something else,
Bell.
you do it again.
But beyond Marcus, we also have Chris, aka Korea9, joining us today.
Hey.
And of course, BJK394, aka Ben.
Oh, I guess he died. Sorry, Ben.
You hear me? Oh, there you.
Okay, we can hear you now. And then we've passively got Craig watching us in the background, taking the place of our dearly departed Javi today.
Javi didn't die. Jesus.
We don't know that.
It's true, we don't. I hope he didn't. That would be very sad.
Craig can take up the slack. It's okay.
I don't think Craig is going to talk anywhere as much as Javi would. So.
Well, we don't know. Maybe.
I'll wish Javi back with the Dragon Balls. That's good.
So, Grace, how do you feel about driving Javi away from the podcast with this game?
It's awful, really. I mean, I've never felt this bad in my whole life.
Oh, and context might be important. Today we are talking about SteamWorld Quest, Hand of Gilgamesh. That's the full title, right?
Gilgamech, right? I kept saying Gilgamesh too, but I think it's Mech, right?
Yeah, you're right, Chris.
Yeah, it's
you're
Mech.
so right.
Yep. Okay. So yeah.
Take it away, Grace. Tell us what the game's about. Your favorite game.
I mean, I like it. It's one of my favorites. Anyway, so SteamWorld Quest is a turn-based card battler RPG where you play as we start out with Armili, Copernica, and I think it's Galeo as your party, who they were out like picking mushrooms or something, and they come back and find their village under attack by this army called the Void Army, who's under the command of this Dark Lord. And the Void Army has kidnapped all the heroes in the village. Well, quote unquote heroes. We'll get into that. And so the three characters set off to rescue the guild heroes and sort of stop the Void Army. And of course, it spirals into a lot more from there. The story kind of, once they rescue the guild heroes, there's a lot more that happens after that. They get joined by two other characters, Oric and a pair of twins whose names I can't remember. But yeah, basically they just kind of set out to stop the Dark Lord, and they do it by fighting with cards. So we'll talk more about the gameplay and such after this.
After the sponsor break. Brought to you by SteamWorld Heist, the game we did not play.
Well, those are
the game I almost played. You mean? No. But yeah, no. What else to say? Like, yeah, it kind of starts out like The Princess Bride with the a kid being like, please tell me a bedtime story, and the dad being like, okay, do you want to hear another pirate story? And he's like, no, I've heard too many pirate stories. And then me subconsciously being like, I don't know, a pirate story sounds pretty awesome. I'm not the biggest fan of fantasy sometimes.
Yeah, that's actually kind of the character in question is from SteamWorld Heist, and that's a pirate game, so it's kind of like a callback to
SteamWorld. That is a pirate game. Okay, cool.
Although
good to know.
Much, they disappear after that first little framing device, and even the narrator is a completely different character.
I was gonna say, I literally forgot that happened. Like that the game starts out like that.
Yeah,
the narrator is like they kind of intro the chapters, right? Because it's still told, like the chapter menus and stuff are still like kind of like a storybook.
Yeah, like the narrator actually narrates the ending, like not the guy who's reading the book.
That's funny.
But yeah, this is also a game where like world building story kind of takes a backseat to the actual gameplay. So yeah, I mean, there's a couple of like humorous jabs from the characters, but beyond that, there isn't really a lot of substance in the narrative department.
There's a lot of talking though.
Yeah.
You get a lot of like dialogue heavy bits every few screens, at least early on in the 10 chapters I played.
Yeah, I mean,
a meme reference to whatever was popular at the time they made the game.
what was the meme that was referenced?
I couldn't even tell you anymore. They throw in a few little meme references, and it's just like, huh, yeah, that's the thing. There's not much more to say about it than I never really like when they they throw in those little references. I think the better nods to greater pop culture and other video game things are just when like I don't know. It's just a little level design. It's like, oh yeah, that sort of looks a little bit like that other thing. Or like, oh, here's an item you use that's a reference to something else. But when you like stop everything and have the dialogue like tell a joke that usually falls flat, it's rough for me to handle those.
Yeah, it's like what is it, Galileo or whatever. Like basically, his entire character is like, oh, he lives in his mom's basement, and it's just like, okay, let's make an entire character based around that.
You're remembering more than I am about that guy. They all feel like real thin archetypes, and like y'all mentioned, just sort of, yep, let's just get to the next fight, basically.
Yeah, because what is it? As I think Grace pointed out a moment ago, we've got, I guess, technically 6 characters, but one, I guess, 2 of them function as one character, and you've got Armilly, who's kind of like a role player woman who's just obsessed with her book of heroes or whatever. You've got Caprica, who is a snooty, well, maybe not snooty. Well, she really
Alchemist.
hates druids. Yeah, she's an alchemist. And then you got Galileo, who does repairs but lives in his mom's basement. You've got Auric, who's the sidekick to Gilgamech, and he's mysterious and cool. And then you've got Phil and Mel, or what are their names? Tara and Thane. Sorry. Yeah, basically, that's your entire party, and not a lot of them get character development, to be fair.
And you can only use 3 at a time. So like after you get the other 2 characters, you have to like pick and choose who you want to use.
Yeah, I quickly got rid of Armilly, and I never even tried Terra and Thane. I just stuck with Auric, Caprica, and Galileo, because Galileo is like the healer type. And get a black mage in there, and then get a red mage in there, and good to go.
It's Caprica, really?
I think it's Copernica.
That's right. Okay. Like Copernica, like Copernicus.
Oh,
yeah, that's what it was in my head.
Well, much like Dax said, Gilgamesh. I keep getting the names mixed up. I keep calling the green guy Galileo.
Yeah.
The mage is just Copernicus or whatever, and yeah, Amerly. Like I don't get their names right at all. Like,
yeah, what's Armilly a reference to?
I mean,
I don't know.
She's just like a overzealous knight wannabe.
Oh, I just meant like name-wise, since like the other 2 main ones were clear references to like other astronomical or
if it is reference to something I don't know.
Astronomy. So
astronomy. Yeah. That's the word. I was gonna say some like astronomical historical figures, but yeah, astronomy's just an easier catch-all. Which is weird. I don't really understand those references either, because it's like it doesn't really seem to care about what's happening in space.
No.
Unless the end
Yeah.
race, does the end boss come from space? Is it an alien?
They never really get into where he comes from. It's just sort of like he sort of they sort of like say that he showed up in the intro and Gilgamech defeated him, and then like they just built a temple on top of him. So like his body's just like underground, and then that's where Gilgamech goes to resurrect him and fight him again.
Okay.
I mean, I think part of that goes into this world doesn't really make much sense. They probably should have at least given an option to flesh it out a little bit more than they did. Because like the SteamWorld, what were the original ones called? The first two?
Dig.
Yeah. Like that world, it was real simplistic, but it's like, yeah, okay, I get it. Like I get what's happening here.
Yeah, it's a Wild West kind of town. Like you're the mining, you're digging down. It made sense. Aesthetically, it made sense.
Yeah, and then it's like, oh, you're like little dwarfs. You dug too greedily. There's some real bad shit down here. You fucked up.
Yeah, and I mean, it's one of those things where it's like you could talk with people in the town, and it felt like the characters were even a bit more fleshed out. And I mean, like, even the ending of SteamWorld Dig 2, where the entire planet blows up and everybody rockets into space. That was, I don't know, I found that more narratively gripping than what was in this RPG.
Yeah, where does what's going on in Heist World, Grace?
I don't remember a whole lot about it, but you're like a band of smugglers slash pirates. You're just kind of like boarding ships and taking stuff. But I know there's a lot more to it than that. It's been a while since I played it.
Do you think it was supposed to take place in the same world as Dig, or is it just like its own thing at that point?
Well, like they all the SteamWorld games kind of share a world. So I would say probably Dig 2 takes place somewhere in the far future. But if it blows up the planet, or it could be that these games take place on different planets, but they all kind of share a world.
They're little robot characters.
Yeah.
Who also eat food, which I know that's a tiny thing, but that drove me crazy. I'm
There's
just
food?
like, oh yeah, yeah. They kept talking about, oh, let's eat the mushrooms, or let's eat rolls, or something like that. And I just like, I could understand if it was oil or even like alcohol, like Futurama or whatever. But just yeah.
Dax
think
is
the
remembering
mushrooms-
the most minute details.
Well, the mushrooms are like mechanical in nature too, I thought.
But it
Yeah,
could be.
I think they're just regular mushrooms. I don't know. They may not be.
But yeah, no, of course. That's obviously nitpicking. Just one of those things that I was just like, what? Okay. But yeah, I mean, honestly, I don't think there's anything else I can add about this story beyond what we've already said. Anybody have anything else they want to say before we get into the actual meat of the game?
Yeah, like I mean, you've all got a point. Like even the ending is just like they beat the behemoth. They kind of like look around and say like, "Oh, we got to fix up all the damage that he's done," and then there's like a kind of "Where are they now?" sort of thing, like montage. But there's really not a whole lot to the ending.
Was the game rushed?
Not that I know of, but it could have been.
Yeah, I mean,
Man,
I'm
it kind of
just imagining like the
It's-
music from the end of the Breakfast Club playing as it's like, where are they now?
I mean, it's satisfying enough, but it's like, after 15 or so hours, it's just sort of, hey, we're done. Let's get on with our lives.
There's like a broader narrative to all of the other like SteamWorld games, because I've only played this one and Dig, and I know there's like a loose like connection of stuff, but it's like I don't even know where this game fits into like the broader like universe of all the SteamWorld games.
Is it more than just a bedtime story?
It could just be a story. It could be like the far flung past of that world or something like that. Or I mean, like they have like golf courses and stuff. It could just be like, oh, this was like 10 years ago. A bunch of LARPers got together and I don't know. Like it's never, as far as
Honestly,
I know,
that makes a lot of sense, Grace. Like, because that's kind of what it feels like. Just like you're on a golf course, like with some friends, going on like this like little adventure where everyone like, hey, we're the big heroes, and like the big hero people are like, man, like you guys are annoying. Please go away. Like, oh, okay. Everyone just kind of mocks them and sends them on their way.
Well,
I like that
except for,
headcanon.
Prenika's mentor who straight up kills herself.
I mean, they're real annoying, Dax. I'm sorry.
Wow. Yeah, no, like the game does try it does try its hand at, like darker moments of sadness, despair, like when Armili is like about to give up because she found out Gilgamech is the fraud. But I mean, it's all very brief. It just kind of keeps going without really digging into anybody's character too much. So yeah, it's disappointing in a way, but I mean the gameplay I think carries it more so than the story. So that's kind of the main draw.
For sure.
And so, how does the gameplay work, Grace?
So like we've mentioned, you have 3 party members, and they all have their own deck of cards. And each time you go into battle, you're randomly dealt a hand of, I think, I want to say like 6 or 7 cards out of everybody's deck, and you play them. If you play them in like in order. I'm sorry, I can't talk. You play 3 cards in order, and then the enemies play their cards. And if you play like 3 cards from the same character, it's a chain, and you get some special ability that comes off of that. And also, some of the characters have combo cards. Like if you play a card from Armili, she might have a combo with Copernica that'll cause more damage or something like that. And also, like some of the cards are like regular attacks, regular buffs that don't cost anything. But as you fight, you build up a meter at the top of steam power, and certain cards need a certain amount of steam power to actually activate them. So basically, it's strategic in the way that you want to build up steam power to use your strongest cards, but also you want to be able to play cards off of each other that really make sense together. Like there's cards that do more damage if a enemy is affected by a certain status effect. So like you may want to hit an enemy with something that causes status effect, and then hit them with the other thing that causes more damage, like stuff like that. But yeah, it's just kind of a strategic card battler, which I will say, before I played this game, I never thought I would enjoy a card battle game, but this one I think really comes together very well. But of course, we'll see what the rest of you think.
Yeah, I mean, I really enjoyed the gameplay. I mean, I don't have a ton of experience with like card battlers. Like I need to play Inscription, and I still need to play like Slay the Spire. But I guess I've also played games like Kingdom Hearts, Chain of Memories. So it's like deck builder games aren't exactly new to me. But yeah, I had a ton of fun. I feel like there's a lot of variety. You can use a lot of strategies. I think my only main complaint was you couldn't build multiple decks, because sometimes it's like, oh, I want a deck to just deal with like regular enemies, and then sometimes I'm like, oh, I want a deck to actually deal with bosses, because with bosses you actually have to be a bit more strategic, use like, oh, I'm gonna put a magic shield on everybody, that's that sort of thing. So that was a little annoying, having to reshuffle the deck and choose everything for different fights, but eh.
I think
Yeah,
another layer with those cards too is, and in particular, choosing what cards you're going to use for what sort of encounter, is that there's an upgrade mechanic with the cards. So you can, if you find yourself gravitating towards a few couple of cards more than others, you can make sure that those are as upgraded as they can with the limited resources that you're allotted. There's also the ability to craft new cards for all of your characters, but I honestly, I went very minimal with that. I think I usually only just crafted like the free attack cards, not different. I don't know. I don't know what you want to call them, spells, essentially, because I wasn't completely like confident in knowing what each thing would actually do and how it would behave on the field. So I was a little conservative in that regard.
I don't play card games generally. Uh, except the one else Steam thinks that I love card games. But anyway, it's I enjoyed it. I think it's simplistic enough. It's easy enough to understand. It's, you have to, as Grace said, you build up like your Steam with using like free play cards that don't cost anything, and yeah, I think similar to you, Marcus. Like I was upgrading like those types of cards or crafting those ones because they were the ones that seemed most useful. Because I would end up I have gotten draws where it's like get the 4 for the knight character, 4 for Galeo, and like a 3. Like it's like I have no ones at all, so then I have to like recast the cards or whatever and hope I get something there. But it's simple enough that like in general I was able to kind of get through it. And I'm playing on baby mode, so maybe that might be helping me a bit here, but I understand it enough that I'm able to like eke by in most fights.
Yeah, I forgot to mention the redraw mechanic, but yeah, that can be helpful, but can also just like give you absolutely nothing. Like sometimes during boss battles, I would have Galeo as my healer, so like there was later in the game, I would have like 2 quick fix cards, which are like healing and remove harmful effects, and then like 2 team repairs. So I'm like, I have 4 healing cards in my deck, and I never get dealt any of them when I really need it. I'm saying like redraw. I need to heal. I just end up using items, so it can be kind of annoying sometimes. But yeah, it is really fun and really easy to understand.
I didn't, and maybe I haven't got there yet because I'm only through chapter 10. But when did they introduce the synergy kind of thing where you get the build off of, like where you get a combo off of somebody else's card? I don't think I've run into that.
Chapter 4, I think.
Oh, so like I just totally missed that mechanic then.
Yeah, so if you look at your cards, you'll see an icon for one of your other party members, like on the card, and that's the one that means like if that other person's played a card from their deck in that turn, when you use this card, you'll get that bonus.
Okay.
Yeah, it's never really explained in battle. It's kind of like it's. I think it's explained when you're crafting cards or something like that.
They do explain the like if you play 3 cards from one character, you get like the bonus card, the ultimate or whatever, which isn't always all that ultimate, but sometimes it's good.
Like,
yeah, I mean, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna. You said like what's coming to mind when you say it's like, oh, it's not that ultimate, because usually they were pretty useful. I mean,
it's like normally you expect like a huge like big attack or something, and like I was using the knight person, like so I could pair 3 of those together, and then I don't know what I did. Like I guess I have a card in there that changed the ultimate from what it was to it inflicts like a bleeding status, which is nice, but that only lasts for like 1 turn. It's like yeah, I did 30 damage to this thing that has 5,000 damage. And when it does an action, it's going to bleed for 100 damage. So that's nice. But I would have preferred like a big, like my 4 card for the knight person like causes like 400 damage. Like that would have made me happier to see.
Yeah,
It's not that it's not useful, but
I get that, but I think
Yeah,
they
no,
were
I
trying
get
to,
where
like,
you're coming from, and go ahead, Grace.
I was just gonna say, I think they were trying to like do that with like the higher value like skill cards, the ones that cost like 4 steam, sometimes 3.
yeah.
That's where they were trying to get into like the really powerful attacks more so than like giving you a freebie that's like overpowered.
I use those cards that basically have like the X number, so like it will just use however much steam you have and just do like a big ultimate attack based on that. So
Yeah, Orc
occasionally,
has one that was pretty cool that did that. I like that one.
yeah. So occasionally, I would just like if I had one of those, I would just like build up as much steam as I could, and then just unleash that, and you can like wipe out whole screens with just that one card. Those are pretty nice.
Yeah, and you can also like you can choose your ultimate because like when you're shopping at the caravan, the magic caravan that can traverse any terrain, you can choose different weapons, and I'll be like, oh, you can do your mass lightning attack as your ultimate, or you can do your magic shield for the party, like with Copernicus or whatever her name is.
That's what it was. Like I upgraded my team's equipment and it changed the knight character Amerly from whatever they had to like the impale or whatever that caused the bleeding effect. That's what did it.
Yeah, like the first set of weapons that you get does that. Like all of them just change it, and you don't have a choice in it. But later on, you get like usually 2 or 3 choices of weapons that all have a different effect. Like they all have the same like upgrade to the health or health, magic and damage, but like they have different final cards, chain cards, whatever.
Yeah, for Copernica, I definitely did that electricity one just because it gave that paralysis chance as well. It was useful for sort of staving off some of the larger fights and getting wrecked left and right. Because I stayed with just Armili, Frog Boy, and Copernica. Was it Galilei? But like sometimes, because you don't really know what the enemy's going to attack. Like they're going to play an attack card, maybe, and when they attack, if it's not a group attack, they'll just choose someone at random, unless you force the issue on a specific person with Frog Boy. But sometimes they would just demolish my mage, and I'm like, well, I either have to use a revive kit or I'm just going to restart this fight because this is already like down the tubes. So bits like that where it's like, okay, let me just take a couple of these people out of the equation as fast as possible. I think was sort of my strategy for tackling those fights. I don't know if anyone besides Grace, did you all get to the big tree?
Yeah, I did. I found the big tree.
Yeah, so the big tree just keeps throwing up roots, and the roots all attack you. And then the tree can say, you know what, fuck these roots, and it'll absorb them for health. So it was just an annoyingly long boss battle because it just kept throwing out roots that would be chipping down my team's health, and then I'd get some damage in on it, and then it would just heal itself back up for like half the damage I did to it. So it's fights like those that are like I'm sure there's like if you had a different team combination or if you had different cards, maybe it's a quicker fight, but bits like that where it's sort of where the game's like, okay, I'm gonna log out of the game after this one because I've had my fill of this card battle here.
Yeah, a lot of the fights. I mean, a lot of that's kind of like, I guess, kind of old school JRPG of just like, here's a fight. Like, I think that was the problem with like not being able to build decks because like I would encounter enemies who, I would build like a deck with the mage with like a bunch of fire cards, but then I would encounter enemies who were immune to fire or like not weak to fire, so that deck was just like useless to them. So I kind of wish I could have like, here's like an ice deck, here's an electric deck, here's a fire deck, and I can just like switch between them. Because then like I had to like go and retool the whole thing, take all the fire cards out, put all the electricity cards in or whatever. So like swapping out stuff like that was always like super annoying because you never knew what enemies were or were not weak to until you were actually in a fight with them.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I get why they don't let you change your cards mid-battle, but it would have been really nice if they did.
Even just outside of battle, I would have settled for that. But yeah, I mean, like aesthetically, the game's pretty cool. I guess just like in terms of like, oh, you're navigating like little rooms one at a time, and usually you'll encounter enemies like in the middle of them, and sometimes you can sneak around, but most of the time you'll have to fight them. But aesthetically, I dug the music. I dug the visuals. I think the only problem I had with the game was kind of the narrative and some gameplay issues.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I can't speak too much of the music. Pretty early on, there wasn't enough going on that front, so I had my battles at 2 times speed and was just listening to podcasts.
What, you can have battles at 2 times? Oh my god!
Like the animations and stuff, yeah.
That would have saved me some time. I didn't realize that applied to combat as well.
Yeah, yeah, I was getting real annoyed by it, so that's why I went looking in the options for that one.
Yeah,
That's good to know.
I didn't realize that was there, but it would be really good during the final boss because he has a couple of animations that take forever.
You mean you don't want to watch like what is it, like in Final Fantasy VII, where it's like this solar system attack by a freaking Sephiroth? You don't want to watch that animation, 3-4 times over?
I mean, it's cool the first time. And,
Yeah, but like that's the thing with RPGs. They put so much work into the animation, you can't skip it.
I don't even know if I mean, I'm sure that's definitely part of the equation, but RPGs in general, and it's a little bit of a tired complaint, but that whole you're not really respecting my time here thing. I feel that most acutely in RPGs where it's just I feel like I'm doing the same thing over and over, like more often than not. And I think that's why this game overall is something I liked a little bit more because of it. It's a little more compressed. There's a little bit less fluff going on. But even still, it's just like, okay, like I guess I was hoping and wishing for something a little bit better on the like off battle side of things to sort of round out the experience. And without that, it's like, yeah, the card stuff's fine, but it's still, if you do the same action over and over, it eventually wears on you regardless of how that quality is. And so I think that's where this game is like, yeah, it's pretty good RPG. Oh, but it's also not a great RPG, and so it's very much a double-edged sword in that regard.
No, I pretty much concur with that.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, it's one of my favorites, not my favorite. Like, if I was gonna compare it to something like, Persona 5, like I absolutely love Persona 5, and that's one of my favorite games ever, one of my favorite RPGs ever. Like, name a category, it's probably one of my favorites. And then this game is like, it's also an RPG, and but the thing that makes it stick out is like the card battle is like, oh, this is unique and different compared to what I usually play. So that's kind of where it lands with me. Is like I really enjoy it, but mostly because it's something kind of different from what I'm used to as far as RPGs. Like, I've never really played, like, other than Kingdom Hearts Chain of Memories, which I absolutely hate. I've never really played that many card RPGs. So it's kind of like, this is a unique, fun experience. But like you're saying, as an RPG, it also has a lot of drawbacks because it's just kind of very rooted in the past, I guess.
for everyone on this call, have any of y'all played Midnight Suns?
Oh yeah, I did play that.
Oh yeah, I did. I love that game. I forgot it was card based though.
I know, right?
How does it work in that game? Like similar to this, or
More or less,
I-
yeah.
Slightly
you like it?
similar. I mean, it's a more environmental. Like you're kind of like say you're like in a New York City block, and you'll be able to use the environment to like, oh, I'll throw this mailbox at a enemy, and that will take up like one action point, and you're given a certain number of points, a certain number of cards you can play, and you just play off of different character strengths. You know, throw a Spider-Man in there, throw the Hulk, that sort of thing.
because you're still like physically moving like Spider-Man or Iron Man around the board. It's just then you're playing cards off of that, like there's action cards or something.
Yes.
It's visually, it looks like XCOM. Like that's visually when I think of Midnight Suns, that's what it looks like.
That's a good point of comparison, really.
And that was kind of what they were doing at first. They pitched it to Marvel as like, oh, it'll be a Marvel XCOM, but then they started doing it, and the whole thing with XCOM is like your soldiers can be expendable, and you know, with Marvel,
Can't
you're
kill
playing as
Spider-Man.
superheroes. Yeah, well, yeah, you're playing as superheroes, so you want to feel more powerful. So they kind of retooled it to like a card-based system, but. Yeah, and then you've got like a certain number of moves. You need to be able to get into like a certain range in order to attack up close. Yeah, it's pretty well versed out, and I enjoyed doing that in between, you know, the main draw of the game, which was, you know, talking to everybody back at home base, like the Mass Effect sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's part of that distinction. And like, so like comparing them to me felt pretty similar in the way that the cards are doing attacks, but there's just a little bit more to work with Midnight Suns, so the battles feel a little less repetitive as a result of that. And then having that sort of dialogue, and like, you know, you can just like mess around whatever the little mansion back home is called, and talk to everyone, and do what you want there. And while some of it is like required, there's also a bunch more like, hey, if you're really into this, like you can get deep in there and see some stuff. So it just felt like it rewarded that side of things, and it gave players a lot to do on that front as well. And yeah, the lengths of the games are very different. Going back to what Grace is talking about a little bit with Persona 5, like Persona 5 is like what, 100 hours, like on average, not even maxed out experience.
Yeah, that's just a regular playthrough.
Yeah, so like, you do expect to have more content, more things to do in games of that sort of length. I think Midnight Suns is shorter, but still like 70 hours ish. But I don't know. I think, you know, I feel like a lot of the SteamWorld games sort of strip it down to just like real good, strong fundamentals. But I think for this game, it just got stripped down a little too much.
Got it.
Because yeah, I mean, like I haven't played Heist, but in SteamWorld, both Dig 1 and 2 are arguably some of the best Metroidvanias I've played. So I mean, like they do really good work. It just, yeah, I feel like this just wasn't one of their stronger projects.
I liked it. I would play another game in this style. I just if I were to play something else, I just hope it like had a, you know, when I go into a game that has like story and characters, like that's what I get invested in. And like that this doesn't have a whole lot for me to grab onto. It's fine. Like sometimes they say something funny. I think other times, like Marcus says, like they try to make cultural references that maybe don't work if you're not aware of what they're going for. But as like an intro to this type of game, I'm like, yeah, I would definitely try something else similar to this in the future.
Yeah, I would absolutely play another one of these. Although if anybody from Imogen Forward hears this, I would love a SteamWorld Heist sequel first.
Fair enough. I would like if they hired some voice actors, because
That would be nice.
between the intro of this one and not just like the lack of voice acting throughout the game, but like when you do hear voice actors, it's like, oh, wow, no, please, I'm sorry. Like I know you're trying your best, you know. I'm glad you're doing this, but I just keep it to noises if that's what we're gonna get. Because I had also recently played SteamWorld Build, I think is the little city builder one,
Mhm.
and that had more voice acting across the cast, but it wasn't any better.
Yeah, you don't want the little Animal Crossing noises that everyone makes in this game.
I would take that over for what I got when people actually spoke.
Well, I mean, I think we can all agree Banjo-Kazooie nonsense noises are always funny and never get annoying.
I mean, they have a charm.
Mm.
They definitely have a charm. But
That was sarcasm, but by the way, I do kind of like it, but it get annoying.
I was gonna. If you were being serious, Dax, I was gonna like. I don't know about that.
You could tell my voice was laced with sarcasm. Come on.
that's how you normally talk.
Oh yeah.
Just normally laced with sarcasm, so we can't tell when it is or isn't.
But yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think if there's anything else to say before we get into our final thoughts on the game. Anybody else have anything off the top of their head you want to discuss before we get into that?
Yeah, I want to thank Grace for I think it was you, Grace, giving me that warning about the boss that like couldn't take physical damage. I switched things up to make sure I could like do something with that. My Armilly was like all physical based up until I saw that message. I was like, oh shit! All right, let me change that right now.
Yeah, there's like a little tiny bit of build up. You know a boss is coming, but there's absolutely no warning that if you have a deck stacked with physical attacks, it's going to be just complete crap. That's why I told everybody, because nobody told me.
What did you guys do for that? I'm not there yet. So, like, what did you guys end up doing for that boss?
So I still had Armili, Copernica, and Galeo, whatever.
Mhm.
Like for Galeo, I just for his attacks, I just gave him like the water or the frost-based attacks.
Mhm.
For Armili, I gave her fire-based attacks because she can have several at that point in the game.
Mhm.
And Copernica is, of course, she's all magic unless you have Book Bash, which is completely useless and you shouldn't be using it at that point of the game. But anyway, yeah, like I just stacked everybody with like non-physical attacks.
Got it.
Like, even though Armili is like based on physical attacks, like if you use like hot iron, which is she stabs them with a sword on fire, it still counts as a fire attack, not physical. So it worked.
Yeah, I did a very similar strategy there. With Armilly, I think I did a little bit more in like the flame realm at that point, where it's like, yep, I switched out all the normal sword attacks for the flaming sword attacks, and then the specials that like previously had been like headbutting and lowering attack stuff like that. I just went to either lower their fire defense or boost my fire damage just to really go hard on that. So of course, you know, when you get to the person who's strong against flame, Armilly is useless, but it worked out for that one boss.
Yeah, I did it for that one boss, and I just changed back to whatever I had been using before.
That's what I should have done. I just don't want to mess with the cards again.
Gauntlet of bosses at the end where it's like basically all the same bosses you already fought. It's just you have to fight them again, but stronger. And like that, that whole section was super annoying for me.
And then the clones of your party.
Oh yeah, that was really hard for me because I guess I ignored Copernica because she has that spell that puts the shield up on everybody. And I was like, I'm going to go for the healer first and take him out. But it's like, actually, I can't because it's too hard. So like, eventually I just had to focus on her and then kill the healer and then kill Armilly. I had to do in that order, but it took me like 2 times to figure that out.
Yeah, I focused the healer in that fight just because, like, when I was doing damage to Copernica, and it's like, oh, and it's all healed back now. I'm like, fuck this. Let me just get rid of this dude. He seemed, and the thing that was like a little annoying for me, it just felt like this dude's healing way more than like my guy ever heals. This, like, how does he have all these action points to do this?
He's
Yeah, that's
just that much better at card games than you are.
And I think the bosses are cheating.
yeah, it's just one of those like
Of course
really
they are.
super fun. My rules are not your rules kind of thing.
Thanks, Grace. Probably would not have played this. Actually, I can guarantee I would not have played this if you had not suggested it. So, thank you
And
for introducing me to this type of game.
Laced with sarcasm.
No sarcasm there. Like I am, and I didn't mention this. Like I recently bought a Steam Deck and I played it almost exclusively on that. Perfect game for like handheld, like to kind of just play, pop in, do a battle, save, back out, and worked real well for that. So
Yeah.
Yeah,
like,
Oh, go ahead, Grace.
I was just gonna say I honestly wouldn't have played it unless I had played hadn't. What am I trying to say? I wouldn't have played it if I didn't play Heist because like I loved Heist so much. I was like, okay, I really want to get into the SteamWorld games now. Of course, I started playing Dig and never finished it, but then like Quest came out a little bit later. I was like, this looks, it looks interesting, different, and I'm not sure if I would like it, but I definitely want to give it a try. So like I bought it on sale at some point and I ended up loving it. So yeah, I wouldn't have played it if I didn't already played at least one of the other games because it really did kind of go under the radar.
And now that Chris is a card game aficionado, he can play lovely card games recommended by Steam like Lust Goddess.
yep, get right on that.
It's free to play.
It is free to play. That is true. Yep.
The divorce will be expensive though.
It's probably free to play right up until you get in there, and it's like then you got to buy all these packs. So yeah, and I don't think my wife would be like, "What the fuck are you doing?" Like, I'm playing Lust Goddess. I'm a card player now. Like, she would
I'm just here for the
understand.
gameplay.
Right, it's just the gameplay.
Also, I
definitely not
spent
the
all of
plot.
our retirement funds on cards,
Cards,
including
because like the naked cards are they higher damage, right? Like, they're better cards. I need the naked ones.
When did we start talking about The Witcher 1? No. Is that a mechanic in that game? Like, you got, like, cards of just, like, oh, you met a girl in the
yes.
world, and then it's...
That is true.
But, yeah, let's go ahead and get into our final thoughts on the game. I think we've already kind of illuminated what we thought, but just a couple of concise words. In general, I really did like this game. I think what Chris just said about it being a really good portable game, I was able to kind of play it while watching TV in the background with my wife. It was a fun game, just didn't do anything for me in the narrative department. What about you, Ben?
Yeah, same thing. I think it's a pretty basic game narratively, but the gameplay was fun and it was good enough that kept me going through it. Yeah, if they ever do a SteamWorld Quest 2, but with like a more interesting narrative, I think I would probably like it a whole lot more. Yeah, I feel like that's usually the case with a lot of SteamWorld games. Is like the second one they make is better. Like SteamWorld Dig 2 is like way more celebrated than SteamWorld Dig 1, I feel like. But yeah, overall this one's good. Yeah, not incredible, but yeah, pretty good for what it is.
I'll jump in. I'm not gonna sort of go over the same points too much again, but yeah, I think this is one of those games that, like Chris said, I never would have played this one on my own ever. And I do intend on finishing this. I will drop it down to baby mode because I don't want to grind out higher levels, but I want to see it to the end just to feel like it's a complete experience. It was a fun use of of the card mechanics. It just again, like so many games I feel like I play these days. If it was 8 hours long, I think I would have been much more satisfied with the time I had with it. The thinner characters and all that would have sort of rolled off the top of my head, like that. Just because it's like, yep, you don't really expect much out of a game that's that short. But once we rolled over that 10-hour mark and it just kept going, I'm like, all right, guys, like this. I feel like I've seen everything you're going to do here. We don't need to keep doing the same things over and over. And I've been Googling it, you guys. There is a sequel to this. Like it already exists. In fact, there's 2 sequels. They've really changed it up a lot. Yeah, Quest 2 and Quest 3. If you guys just sort of Google that, like it's really expensive, but there's a lot going on with that.
I think I'll wait for a sale, but good to... Laced with sarcasm. That's the title of the episode, right?
We have titles?
Generally, no.
SteamWorld Quest, colon, laced with sarcasm.
The game, honestly, that is one thing I'll give it credit for. I don't think it actually really had much sarcasm going on. A few characters here and there, but I think I generally expect these sort of games to be less. What's the term I'm thinking of? They're not organic, but we were describing El Paso elsewhere as this, where it just felt like, yeah, it feels like sincere. And while the game wasn't necessarily sincere from speaking from a point of like personal truth, it just felt like, hey, you know what? We're doing a fantasy thing. Here's a fantasy quest, characters that like want to be a hero, and they just let them do that. That while there's a couple characters here and there that sort of undermine that, the game itself doesn't really ever feel like it's trying to point you in that direction and try to make you think that this person's wrong for just wanting to do some good stuff here.
Cool. And let's see, Grace.
I'll just kind of mirror. Like I get what everybody's talking about with the narrative. It's a little flat. I mean, predictable kind of, and just not a whole lot to it. But I enjoyed it well enough, and I did enjoy the humor mostly because it's like puns and just silly off the wall stuff when they do throw out a joke, which is pretty much my humor. So I did like that, but I can understand it's not everybody's thing. But yeah, like, I don't know if I mentioned it. This was my second time playing the game, so I pretty much knew what I was getting into, but it didn't like diminish it at all. It was still just as fun and just as fresh as the first time I played it. I don't know, about 5 or so years ago. So yeah, I just I really enjoyed it, and it holds up very well no matter what. Like I could play it again and still enjoy it. So it's great, and that's where I'll leave it.
Was there a new game plus with it then after you beat it?
There is. I haven't tried it, but there is one.
Oh, okay.
Cool. And Chris, I think you already outlined your thoughts when you were kind of talking about how you recently got a Steam Deck, and it's just a really good portable game. But anything else you'd like to add?
No, I think we covered everything.
All right, cool. So yeah, that is SteamWorld Quest, and thanks to Marcus, you heard it here, folks. There's 2 and 3 that will, well, maybe not as a group, but we might check out individually later on. So yeah, and I believe Marcus is choosing our next game.
Alrighty, y'all. The 4 options on the table are Deliver Us Mars, Curse to Golf, Evil West, and Norco. Are all votes in?
Believe so.
I like your announcer voice.
Thank you. All right. Well, given that everyone's voted, Evil West wins.
Right. I already own the game. Huzzah!
Like with real money? You bought it?
Oh no, PlayStation Plus.
It's on PS Plus and Game Pass now, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's why I chose it.
I'm the only one here that spent any money on it. I never finished it. I started it, but I need to finish it. That's why I voted on it. It's on my rack of shame right now. Not a rack, because I don't have it physically. But, yeah.
I've installed it. I installed it when it came to PS Plus, and then now I've installed it to my Xbox. I haven't started it yet, but I'm interested by it, so excited to play it.
I heard it's supposed to be an interesting game. I heard some of the stealth stuff might be a little wonky, so
Oh no, there's stealth stuff.
change his vote.
Mark's is like, I gotta change my.
Shit. Oh, weird! It just like disappeared from the list of options.
You're one of the games.
Everest to Mars wins! Huzzah! I might be wrong.
Maybe Grace. Did you run into any weird stealth stuff?
Not that I remember. I remember it mostly just being combat. It could be later in the game, or it may have been so uninteresting that I don't remember. So it's one or the other.
I'd heard this referred to as sort of like those AA 360 games, like something from that era. So I'm like, yeah, I'm down for that.
Sounds fun.
Yeah, I would definitely, like, from what little I played, I would definitely give it that descriptor.
Sweet. All right, so next up is Evil West.
All right, sounds like a plan. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today.
Hey.
Wow.
Thank you so much for joining us today on behalf of our dearly departed Javi.
He's still not dead. He's not dead.
Don't
Again,
worry,
still
I'll
don't know.
resurrect him for the next episode. We got this. Chris, Grace, Marcus, Ben, and myself, we're signing out, and we will be playing Evil West for our next episode. Say goodbye, Marcus.
No. Farewell.